Recording now. I want to thank everybody for joining us. We've done brief introductions before I started this recording. We're going to start with a bit of fun, I think. We're going to start with Trevor Getz from San Francisco State, who's going to introduce us to some nice online resources for teaching. And as we go through each person, you guys can feel free also to introduce yourselves as you see fit. So we're going to start with Trevor Getz, and then we'll move on. On deck is Mark Groen from the College of Education. And then we'll move down the line. Whoever feels that they'd like to speak among our hosts and our co-hosts, we've got about 10. So there's plenty, lots and lots of experience and wisdom to share with you guys going down the line. So hopefully it won't be a sort of a too many cooks in the kitchen situation. I think it's gonna go pretty smoothly. Knock on wood. And without further ado, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Especially want to thank our panelists for joining us, and thanks to all the students, you guys who are making time to pick up on what our panelists are going to share with you today. So I want to introduce Trevor Getz from San Francisco State University, and I will mute myself and get out of the way.
Jeremy, how long do I have so I don't cut into anyone else's time?
If you want to take something like 10, or if you need a little bit more time, that's also fine.
10 is great. So hi, everybody. It's nice to meet you all. So my name is Trevor Getz. I'm a professor of African and World History at San Francisco State. I'm also the historian lead for the OER Project, which includes the Big History Project and the World History Project. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the World History Project because it may give you some insight into the way things are going, but also give you some resources that may be very helpful, I hope. Basically, the World History Project is what happens when you get together a large community of master teachers, K through 12 teachers with a great deal of experience, some educational psychology and science of education people, and historians to create a class, and then you get Bill Gates' wallet to pay for it. And what we created is this program that's continuing to develop and will be ongoing. I'm going to show you the content side to some degree, but the secret sauce is actually the community side, because it's a community of historians who can work with each other. The World History Project has really 2 courses that are live within it. One is a pattern that starts in 1750 and goes to the present, and essentially mimics the state of California's pattern and the state of New York's pattern. The other is an origins project, which starts really with the Big Bang. I mean, not really. It starts with the beginning of human history and goes to the present. And we're going to have an AP version that's going to be live soon. We're going to have a lot of patterns for other states. But essentially what you've got is you've got 2 parts. So the first part is the course itself. And please, if anybody does have questions, just unmute yourself and chime in. I don't mind being interrupted at all. So here's the 1750 version of the course. You'll notice that I did have to enter a password. Everything here is free, downloadable, usable, shareable, anything you want. And everything that we create is actually going to be available soon at 4 levels of reading. So from really a 6th grade reading level to a high 10th grade reading level. And then we've got a whole framework, and each of these courses, so the 1750 to the present course, is designed to align with state standards, but also to do 3 things really. The first is to create usable histories and help students figure out how to use these histories to orient themselves to the current world. The second is that they all have these skills progressions embedded in them. So activities that students do that help them build the skills of thinking like a historian, understanding causation, working with primary sources, these sorts of things. And then the third thing is that they each also have a narrative that runs through them. So the whole course has these narratives that we give students, these big narratives. So if I were to go to a unit like Unit 5 here, and I went to the beginning, to the overview section, you would see that there's an overview video, and you would see that there's also an overview article for students. And there's also another article that tells students how this unit fits into different frames, like thinking about this in an economic frame or in terms of networks and things like that. But we give students those narratives so that they can question them. And so what we do then is we've let dozens of historians loose on different topics. So here, if I were to go, we're going to continue on this Unit 5, which is about empire. If I were to go to the section here on colonialism, and we've got first an activity where students work to look at primary sources on different perspectives on imperialism. And every one of these also has a lesson plan attached to it for the teacher to see. An article on colonial violence that we brought in an expert to write. An article, so here's a video that we shot in Ghana. So that's one of the great things. We have videos that we shoot around the world that are specifically designed for the course and that use local historians. So I will say you don't see a lot of courses that have African historians from Africa talking about Africa in the world. And you know, then articles on struggle and transformation in China, the Opium Wars, again with this contextualizing activity where students work on their skill of contextualizing. And so everything is in here, including assessments, including activities. It's all wonderful, and I'm very, very proud to have been sort of the lead historian of this part of it. But this isn't the part of it that's actually the most important part. The most important part is actually the community part. So what the community is it's teachers helping teachers. The great thing about having Gates Ventures or Gates Foundation money is that we can actually pay our expert teachers to be online, contributing things, helping out. If you're brand new, you can go in to the 1750 to the present course area, for example, and somebody has asked for certain questions about, you know, World War I, they shall not grow old, is that good to use? What activity would you use? And another person chiming in with what activity they would use. And we get really good traffic here. Plus we have office hours from our master teachers as well, contributing to this. And so we have these big sets of resources. The whole course is designed for a person we actually know, whom we call John the golf coach, because he was a golf coach who was told that he's actually down in your area. And he was told, you're going to now teach world history as well as being a golf coach. He didn't know what to do in the beginning, and he became an advisor on developing this class. And basically, it's all there for if you needed it and you knew absolutely nothing. But most of you, and when you become teachers, you probably don't need that at all. What you need instead is just to find resources that work for you. And can you go in here and pick and choose? Absolutely. You can just pull out an activity and use it. We don't care. There's no money involved. There's no copyright claimed, essentially. Everything is Creative Commons. You can use a video with our lesson plan. You can develop your own lesson plan. The only thing we ask teachers is if you develop your own lesson plan or activities, share it with others. And if it's really good, we'll talk to you about you know, purchasing it to put in the course as an additional activity. This is essentially all about the kind of community that we can have built on top of a framework of materials, essentially. And yeah, so Professor Murray there has been very active, partly in helping us develop the lesson plans, the reading lesson plans around some of these materials, but also in really being the lead, one of the two leads, in developing our big assessments that come at the end of different units. And I just want to repeat as well that if you were to check in 2 months, you'd see that there's an AP version that strictly adheres to the guidelines of what the AP wants as well. And it basically replaces a textbook for the classroom in the case of AP. AP doesn't allow us to be as free as we want to be. There's a lot less gender in the AP class, unfortunately, because that's how they design it. a lot less of some of the fun stuff, but it really supports the AP World History classroom as well. Anybody can go in and join. They'll ask you for where your school is. Just put independent school. That's fine. Nobody cares. You put in your email address. You're not going to get spam. And you can go in and you can pull out any of these resources that you want and use them as you need to in an educational environment at all. So I just wanted to tell you about this resource that's available to you. And I think that that's my long diatribe. Stream of consciousness, kind of Faulknerian style, just like coming out, like I'm throwing it up at you. But I would be happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. And thanks, Alexander. I appreciate the clap.
Thank you, Trevor. That's I'll note that I'm also going to share links like this and any other resources that anybody else lists. Anything that you guys want to send to me, I will then in turn share with students who might watch this as a recording or might be watching now and trying to, you know, scribble everything down. I will send an email out to the department and those of you guys here, if anybody wants to share anything with me to then share in turn, we'll send that out to the whole crew. But I really like this, these materials, and it's been delightful being a little part of it and watching it come together, because for those of you guys who are future history teachers or current history teachers, but especially because this is a sort of a future history teacher program, you should know that it seems like every day there are more and more wonderful materials out there. There's obviously, we know there's a lot of nonsense on the internet and problematic stuff, but there's also a lot of really, really well done material, more and more. And this project, the World History Project and Online Educational Resources, the OER aspect of it is really, I think it should be for you guys very reassuring to know that there's so much support out there, especially if you're tech savvy, but you don't have to be. This stuff is very user-friendly. But in terms of establishing that community, those kind of discussion things, it's actually something very similar to what I wanted to do 4 years ago when I started doing these future history teacher panels. I tried to do it on a very small level and it didn't quite come together. That is, have a kind of community like you showed us, Trevor, of people discussing things, discussing problems. Jim and Peg, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I have a question. I just, speaking from the position of being an officer of the Inland Empire Council for Social Studies, and we'll just close that down now.
Yeah.
We can. There you go. That's the chat. It's blocking your face. Does Trevor, are there people in your organization that would be willing to come and do it now that we're doing everything on Zoom, some sort of an overview of the program? I think presented at CCSS, but I was thinking of a local council to have, some topic or another that.
Absolutely. I mean, I talked to 4 sets of teachers. Well, I just this morning got off with the 150 teachers in the UK, their local schools group, one local schools group. Unfortunately,
Eurocentric. Then are you?
Or
at the end of Eurocentrism?
Yeah, no, well, I mean, they're interested in ending it, but their whole pattern is that you can only get world history either in sort of 12-year-olds or at A level where nobody has to take history, so it's just a small group. They're behind us, actually. They're quite far behind us in terms of globalizing. But sure, and we have folks down your way. I mean, who are either master teachers or creating content. So absolutely, and my email is always available. I can set those sorts of things up. But also, if you are a future teacher and you want to talk about this stuff, I'm happy to do it and to put you on to some of the people who are doing work in this area. So yeah, so thanks for the opportunity to talk with you now as well. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Trevor. And we'll move on to Mark in just a minute. Mark Groen. Did anybody have any other questions for Trevor? And note that you can also send me an email, and I can pass along any queries to Trevor. And note again, I will also share those websites with you guys. I'll share them with the department so you can find them and access them. And they sound very easy to access.
I had one question.
Yeah.
Trevor, are you planning on adding anything in regards to ethnic diasporas or post-imperialism, post-colonialism to the website?
So that's a really good question. We have a lot, I mean, we definitely are undertaking a decolonizing the curriculum approach. We have to be somewhat careful. And the reason we have to be somewhat careful is that we are also serving states like South Carolina, North Dakota, Utah. Fortunately, the 1750 course has at its core some materials that are more focused on this. Things like dual consciousness that focus on Fanon. We do a lot of work, and we brought in, a lot of our experts are actually ethnic studies folks. We've got a great series of articles on American Indian history and contemporary stuff, and American Indians and globalization. And that's Rob Collins did those films and articles for us from the Department of American Indian Studies in the College of Ethnic Studies at San Francisco State. So to some degree, yes, but there's a limit to where we can go there. And the other course, the one that's for mostly Utah and South Dakota and places like that, we make those materials available on an optional basis, but they're not core materials. So the teachers can use them, but they just don't align in many cases with the curriculum there. Yeah, that's the best answer I can give.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, great, thanks.
Thank you, Trevor. Thanks a lot. And Trevor and everybody else, as you guys wrap up your piece of the puzzle, please don't feel obliged to stay for the duration, because there's going to be a lot of different areas covered. We will try to move quickly. So thanks again, Trevor, and everybody else. Let's move on to Mark, because I think that was a really a nice, a meaty way to start in terms of thinking about content. Now we're going to go from content to form a little bit, and sort of what you can expect in terms of exams ahead, what you can expect in terms of applying to credentials. Mark's going to give us, I think, the latest also, Mark Rowan, the latest in terms of exam expectations, CSET, CBEST, and those kind of things. Mark, I'll turn it over to you. About 10 minutes, neighborhood?
That sounds fine.
All right, thanks.
Okay, there's two types of credentials. Well, there's actually several types of credentials, but the two main credentials in the credential program are the elementary credential, which is kindergarten to 6th grade, and the single subject credential, which is what most history people want. And that allows you to teach grades 7 through 12. As a single subject teacher, you won't be just teaching history. You'll also teach civics and government, economics, possibly geography. You may be asked to teach psychology, sociology. There are quite a number of things that you can be asked to teach as a social studies teacher, which actually kind of makes it fun. So most people want the single subject credential. Our single subject credential program is in transition. We're going to semesters that will start in August. We are going to a 2-semester program. So you will have a preliminary credential at the end of the 2nd semester. We are aware that all of the testing sites for CBEST and CSET are currently shut down. Our website says that you must have the CSET and CBEST before you file your program application. However, we are waiving that for now. We will accept you conditionally without CBEST and CSET. So feel free to apply if you're a senior. And if you have any questions, jump in. Okay, great. So the single subject program will be a 2-semester program. We are planning to offer a master's behind that. However, if you're a history person or a social studies person, and I'm being recorded, but I'll say it anyway, I would suggest getting your master's in your content area. And the reason I say that is because there will be a high school student where some small part of your content lights their candle, and they will know more about it than you do. I have a master's in history. I had a student who was a solid B student until we got to ancient China. I was not a Chinese historian. He knew everything about ancient China. So I had to come up with an independent study unit for him while I taught a survey course in ancient China. So definitely get the master's in your content area. Questions, comments, rebuttals?
No, Mark, I just want a quick, oh, it looks like Andrew might have a question, but before you do, I think we might have done, and somebody might have clicked unmute all, and a vast majority of you guys hustled to mute yourselves again quickly, but a few people are unmuted. I just wanted to flag that. Again, because we're recording, everybody who's a panelist here has the capacity to mute or unmute everybody. So let's just be wary of that. Everybody who's not speaking, just make sure you're muted. Sorry to interrupt, Mark. Sorry, Andrew, you had a question.
Yes, I do have a question. So I'm currently a sophomore at Cal State San Bernardino. I go to the Palm Desert campus, and I'm a history track B major. So would you recommend that I, after I graduate, then I can, then I take the CBEST and CSET to get my single subject, hopefully if it's available when I apply, and then after that, I can be accepted into the credential program at Cal State?
Yes, you can be accepted into the credential program in Cal State. I would suggest doing it right after your bachelor's, get the credential, and then get the master's. It makes it easier to get hired if you don't have the master's right at the outset. Because if you have a master's and then you do the credential, you're all the way over on the salary scale, which makes you a little less competitive than other teachers who aren't. Doesn't mean you can't get a job, it makes it a little harder.
Okay, and then so do I wait to take the CBEST or CSET, or should I take it when I'm in college, or you can't take it until you graduate?
No, you can take it at any time. So actually, I would suggest taking it in your senior year.
Okay.
Because if you take it in your senior year, you have the opportunity to retake if things go wrong. However, in your program, things don't seem to go wrong. The Cal State history folks tend to pass the first time, and it's all good. But yes, definitely do it in your senior year.
Okay.
And if you are currently a senior, our program applications are open. So you can apply for this August. I think I have a question on that. Yes, our program is accepting applications currently. Again, if you can't take CBEST and CSET, we are accepting conditionally. So you can be in the program this August. And our final, back up a little. Our website says that the application deadline is June 1. We're kidding, it's not. Our deadline is July 13. So if you can get your materials in by July 13, we will be happy to talk to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm only a sophomore, so I got 2 years to go, but I'm looking forward to it. So thank you very much.
Great.
Hi, I got a question very quick.
Yes.
So my name's Bill. I'm a 5th year senior. I'm actually just completed my requirements for my degree, and I walk in to get my degree in June. Currently, I'm actually taking 2 courses that were offered for free by the College of Education under Becky Sombera in them. They offer 2 courses where we can work towards getting a internship or something like that by next fall. Currently, I want to be a history teacher. I want to teach American history, anything that's offered, preferably high school, because I coach football at that level. When because I saw they do say they're going to do the waiver for the CBEST in certain areas. Right now, since I'm about to graduate, what are the chances of me like be able to move forward really fast when it comes to trying to get the CBEST and CSET done and the credential program? Because I'm still like, that's where I'm a little confused of getting my credentials and everything. Especially since I'm a first generation college graduate, so I don't really have anyone in my family that knows much about the process and everything.
Okay, the first thing you want to do is apply to the program.
Okay.
So apply to the single subject credential program. And if you need assistance in doing that, my email is mgroen@csusb.edu, and I can forward that to our folks. So we can get you in touch with our application people. So filing the program application is the first thing. Now,
okay.
The website tells you you have to have taken CBEST and CSET. However, when you try to do that, you'll find all of the testing centers are closed. So
Yes.
that is no longer possible. Recognizing that that is currently impossible, we are waiving that requirement for admission for this year only. We will conditionally admit you without that. You will have to take the CBEST and CSET at some point during your program because they are required by the state of California in order to obtain a credential. But we can facilitate you getting through those pieces. We don't want to block your credential application because of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it actually helps quite a bit. One more question, sorry about that. Do recommendations help at all with the process of getting into the program? Because I do have one with, actually it's Dr. Professor Long, the assistant dean at the social behavioral science. I've actually took numerous classes with him, and he's pretty much become a mentor for me. And he actually helped me stay in college when I thought about giving up 3 years ago. He actually helped me quite a bit. So a lot of this is because me being here is because of him, and I was able to actually get his the opportunity to have a recommendation from him. I don't know if that helps at all, is putting recommendation letters into the process or anything.
They do require 2 recommendation letters
Okay.
or 2 recommendation forms. So certainly Dr. Long is an ideal recommendation.
Awesome. All right, thank you so much, Mr. Gruen, or Professor Gruen, sorry.
Okay. Other questions? These are good questions. Okay.
This is
yeah.
Peg. I had one statement earlier because people, we were real emphatic about the differences in the single subject and multiple subject. And there was one thing that I think to keep in mind. California, if you are interested in staying in the area, you pretty well, that's the rule. But there, a lot of California is, Northern California in particular, small single schools that have multiple grade levels in the same classroom, or you'll be teaching multiple subjects with a group of students that go year to year. If you're interested in moving out of the city to the green areas of Northern California or whatever, explore the possibilities of the multiple subject preparation. You aren't stuck with making just the little kids. Your classes will be small, and the schools will be small, and they don't really. I used to, in one of the meetings that I did way in my past, was working on setting up what the CSET would have in it and what the content of the subject matter should be for the different subjects at the university that you were taking, that it would match what the schools were including in their frameworks and standards. So I was strongly suggesting that they separate those out and make it where small schools would have to do completely separate classes. And in Northern California, that didn't fly, let me put it that way. They wanted to make sure that a teacher could teach all of the subject areas and could do English and maybe math and science, but they were expecting at least somebody who could do the language arts and all of the subjects in the social sciences easily.
Well, even at the secondary level, the high school level, they want you to be able to teach all of the content in the social sciences.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
you will not be teaching just U.S. history. You'll teach U.S., world, econ, geography, civics and government. You're being credentialed in all of those areas in our program. So you would be competent in each of those. You would have to be. So, and they also
we just
like
didn't
it
talk
when you
about it strongly enough.
interdisciplinary.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can teach interdisciplinary, if you can bring science into the study of history, that is an ideal situation. And quite frankly, it's easy to do. It's very difficult to teach the Renaissance and Galileo, Copernicus, and Newton without teaching some scientific method. So absolutely, interdisciplinary is encouraged.
Yeah, can I speak on that a little bit, Dr.
Certainly.
Bruin, too? I'm a history teacher at a STEM school, and you're absolutely right. We have been going back and forth about our philosophy as like what we do as social science teacher for the program, and we have pretty much like honed in on the history teachers and the science teachers have to be like this when it comes to how they teach the content. So whatever I teach in my classes has to in some way inspire science and help them understand why they're at a STEM school. And so it has been a challenge, and especially team teaching, because eventually our school is going to be transitioning to one where we're going to be probably doing 3 teachers teaching a cohort of students together, and each one of us has to come in with our own expertise to help enhance the learning process. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm actually experiencing that right now. And within the next 5 years, life for me will be me and 2 other teachers together and teaching all at the same time. So I'm really glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
Good. Other comments? Okay.
Looks like we have a question, Mark,
Oh, good.
from Haley. As a first
Haley,
year,
as a
what
first
can I
year-
do now?
Okay, what can you do now? Well, the history program offers you excellent preparation. I would also suggest, though, getting preparation in government and in econ, particularly in econ, because that tends to be an area that's challenging for some history teachers. It is one of the areas you're being credentialed in. And quite frankly, economic history is fascinating. So definitely take at least the basic econ classes.
And that is a requirement in our track A,
Good.
Haley. So Haley, I think the quick answer is to take your track A or your teaching track. What is your track A requirements? And as Mark says, and as I've observed with my former students, I've never heard, and maybe some of our alumni joining us will tell me otherwise now, but I've only heard good news when it comes to the kind of requirements that you're hit with for the credentials and for these standardized tests, the CSET and the CBEST. And this is a credit to the long-standing design of the teaching track. The track A, what's going to be called the teaching track when we switch to semesters. So that's going to give you the econ, that's going to give you the poli-sci, that's going to give you the necessary stuff that's going to equip you really well. So Haley, if you're not track A, and if teaching is certainly what you want to do, or if you're not the teaching track A, then I would say think very, very seriously. I would urge you to be on the teaching track.
Yeah, I am track A.
Great.
Excellent.
Great.
Dr. Murray, can I speak to the first year teaching not at Cal State?
Thanks, Emily. Yeah.
So not just speaking about like hi guys, I'm Emily. I graduated in 2016. So speaking not just what you can do in the classroom, volunteer, 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 volunteer. So this is going to be some of the best practical experience that you can get. I was on very good terms with my AP US history teacher when I graduated high school. And so I went back to my high school and worked with her once a month in her classrooms, either grading papers, rethinking curriculum. I helped her switch over textbooks. And aside from my education, if I did not have that volunteer experience, I don't know if I would have the job that I have now, which I love. And so just even though with your CBEST, when you get certified, you are going to get that teaching experience, showing your future principal or administration that you've cared enough to be in a classroom with that type of longevity is going to speak a lot to your character. And you could potentially get a really good letter of recommendation from a teacher that you volunteer with consistently. That's it.
That's a great and practical tip, Emily. Thanks. Mark, did you have a few more notes from the sort of College of Ed and that sort of perspective for the gang?
Well, certainly, if you can sub, being a substitute teacher is excellent way of finding out whether this is for you. Also, if you can sub, you can teach, believe me. Subbing is the most challenging thing you will ever do in your life. So again, the history program, particularly the track A, is excellent preparation. And we are looking particularly at seniors. If you are interested in applying for the program, I am very happy to help you get through that process. The application process will probably be the toughest thing you do in the program. Frankly, our program application process is convoluted, but it is what it is. It's preparing you to work in a school district, which is the ultimate bureaucracy. So once you're in, we are going to assure that you will make it through and become a teacher. So we can help you through that process. And Dr. Murray and the history department have done an excellent groundwork in preparing you content-wise.
Thanks, Mark.
I'm probably well over my time limit.
No, that was, I think, I really think it's really important to get your perspective, Mark. And we do have a question from, I see the upward bound note from Alex.
Yes, I'd like to add something to what you can do beforehand. So
is that to Alejandro, or we can return to Alejandro's question. Go ahead, Alex. Sorry.
Oh no, I'm sorry about interrupting. No, I'm really glad that Emily brought up the stuff like to be at a school. That's absolutely true. The more you can get in a high school, the best. I mean, you're teaching humans before you're teaching your content. That's what I always tell people. Like, you're teaching people before you teach your content. Always remember that. And so one thing that helped me when I was at Cal State San Bernardino, I graduated in 2013. And what the History Club and I did was we actually got involved with Upward Bound at Cal State San Bernardino. They're a great program. When I was there, they got us in touch with a lot of students that just needed tutoring help for their AP exams. And we were able to get firsthand experience with like high school students on our college campus. And if you don't have access to a high school, they bring that access to you. So learn how to be with high school students, because that is the most important skill you got to learn first. Classroom management, talking to kids, like that's more important than you teaching them your history first. So I just put a link on the chat so you can go to their website on Cal State San Bernardino. They're still a great source. I hope so. They've been good since I was there. So that's another thing you could do. Absolutely.
Thanks, Alex. That's great. And right along with what Emily was saying, we do have an inside man now as well. We've got Ricardo Elias, who's from, you might remember him, Alex. You remember Ricardo? Ricardo, and then Megan Muscara, who I think also from around that same time.
Yeah, same years as we had.
We got people on the inside.
Yes, absolutely.
They went over to Upward Bound and to Gear Up. Now the funding for Gear Up is, I think, a little bit up in the air. But these are both on-campus opportunities. You've gotten emails. Students have gotten emails from me about this. And Ricardo is our man on the inside. Megan, I think, is going to continue in some kind of capacity over there as well. So I really, absolutely. Strongly endorse what Emily said, and what Alex said is one opportunity for that kind of work as well. And you're right here on campus. You're getting volunteer hour work, as Mark and Jim and Peg and others will tell you. There's a little bit of bureaucracy, of course, because this is sort of state side work. But that's part of the game. A couple quick questions came in from Alejandro. I'm planning on pursuing a credential/master's program. That's something we don't do here at Cal State, but we have a couple others in the neighborhood. And I think, Alex, you might have done this at UCU Riverside, if I'm not mistaken, credential/master's. I wanted to quickly add a note to what Mark said as well. There are sort of a couple schools of thought on that in terms of the master's. getting your credentials, getting hired first, and then getting the master's, so that you are able to get that position depending on the rate of the pay scale. There's some who say, oh, get the master's first because you'll be the most knowledgeable candidate. Others say, well, you know, we want to hire somebody at this pay rate. Hiring pay grades are not necessarily going to sway every hiring committee, but there is that possibility, as Mark pointed out, that they're going to look and say, well, this guy's going to be too expensive for us. You know, she got her master's and now it's going to be too pricey. So there's sort of different schools of thought on that. Some might say, well, no, that's not technically supposed to have anything to do with it. But it's you know, arguably a kind of gray area. But note that there are a couple different perspectives on that. And then,
Can I chime in real quick on that?
yes, yeah.
Hi, I'm Heather. So I graduated in 2017 with my master's in social sciences and globalization. So after that, I went to the University of Redlands and I got my teaching credential as well as a master's in education in teaching and learning. So the thing is if you are going to stay in California and be a teacher, then yes, that is most likely very true. Everybody's focused on pay scales and education and what are they hiring you at. However, honestly, it is my master's degree that got me my job here in Florida. That was ultimately the only reason that they called me, was because I have a master's. And in fact, I had not even applied to transfer my credential from California to Florida. But I didn't apply for them. They called me out of the blue and I've worked there for 2 years. So.
Yeah, and the credential program is planning to offer a master's, and I think it's going to be a 1 semester beyond the credential. So we're working on that right now. So that will be in the works as well. So we're basically planning to be competitive with Redlands and APU, who do the same thing. So that will happen after semester conversion. We have a couple of other questions.
Yeah.
Alejandro asked, what can I do to increase my desirability? One of the things you can do is have solid content background. Once you have a solid content background, we'll take you through the student teaching process. You'll get classroom experience. You'll learn classroom management. So those will all make you a desirable teacher. Tessa had a question. Do you recommend getting a multi-subject credential first and then the single subject, or the other way around? I would look at, who do you want to teach? Do you like teaching the little guys? They move around really quick and there's a whole lot of them and they're scary. Or do you like to be able to see them coming? I liked the bigger kids, frankly. I wanted secondary. So it depends on what you want. If you want to teach elementary, that's fabulous. We have a program for you. If you want to teach secondary, that's terrific. We have a program for you. And if you want to do both, there is the supplemental authorization. So we can get you both. So it's really, what do you want out of your career? We can make any of those things happen. Does that answer your question, Tessa?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Others?
I think Bill had his hand up. Is that right?
Yes, Bill.
Yeah, sorry to chime in again. To Emily, for you said volunteer work, I do tutoring with my freshman football players after school before their practices, because they're required to have a certain grade and GPA to be allowed to play. They can't have anything under a C or anything like that. Would that be able to count towards that area of offering? Because we're not, as coaches, we're not required to go. They do ask coaches to come and help the kids. Like we either tutor them, make sure they do their homework, checking their grades for them, assisting them for that 2 hours gap until they have practice. And that's where I've been able to practice that. And I did a year as an intern teacher at Shannon Hills Middle School, right down the street from Cal State, where I taught math and reading groups for a year. So does the coaching one where I just tutor them, would that count anywhere towards that area that you were speaking of?
Speaking from where when I had my interview with my principal, I think that, like, speaking on behalf of my principal, she would absolutely love that, because it shows that you do have that extracurricular interest where it's specifically your players that you're focusing on. Something I would recommend is documenting exactly what you are doing with them, because when you start trying to come up with these talking points for interviews, you're going to forget all of the little things that you've been doing the entire time. So just like when you're tutoring, just kind of say like, oh, I've never done this type of project with my students before. Just make sure that you don't lose it, because you will have more experience than you remember that you have, especially when it comes time to interview or fill out those applications. I also had the privilege of having a letter of recommendation by Dr. Long, so I bond with you on that. He's the best wherever he is.
Yes, he is a one-of-a-kind professor, and I was actually blessed to have him for multiple courses.
One of the kind is definitely the right way to say that.
And I get,
any other
and like Mark, like Professor Groen was saying, like how younger students are pretty energetic. Believe me, freshman football players are a whole new level of amazing. I know how it takes to control a classroom, let alone 60 of them in one small classroom.
Coaching
that's
is a great way to get your foot in the door. Absolutely.
Exactly. Thank you so much for answering my question.
There's also a question from Haley. What do I need to start being a sub? You need a bachelor's degree, and you need to apply to local districts. You'll have to pass a background check, fingerprinting, a TB test, but basically you need a bachelor's degree. So
great, thanks, Mark. So that's a clear answer there. I see we got a couple other questions. I want to make sure Peg and Jim, I think we're going to jump in here. And before I allow a couple questions, Peg and Jim, I also want to make sure we hear from some more of our expert panelists, because I did ask everybody to have a couple things prepared to share with the group. This is not necessary, of course. So those of you guys who I did bring in as experts, and that includes Jacob and Michelle and some others who are taking time to join us. I want to make sure everybody gets time to share and add their 2 bits. This is going to be very valuable, but I also want to make sure that it's somewhat managed in terms of making sure that we stay somewhat on track.
I'll stand down, and if people have questions, please feel free to email me at any time afterwards.
Thanks so much, Mark. Thank you. That was terrific and really sort of info-packed. So I'm glad we're recording this for others to go back over. And I'll also, when I send out the recording, I'll send some of the links that I put in the chat so that others can find that as well. Peg and Jim, sorry, you were going to jump in.
It just a very delightful conversation here on all the things you can do in making yourself more prepared to be interviewed as a teacher. And I just was very impressed with a lot of the discussion there. But a couple of other areas, I did work with the students who had done that work with the Upward Bound students, and we gave them an award with our Inland Empire Council for Social Studies, because they really helped students with their writing, which I thought was really a terrific thing. But that leads me to a couple of other areas, which would be your academic decathlon is a very big thing in high schools. And if a teacher is not from the social sciences, there's an econ section, and there's usually a political science or history section as well as interview and speech. So those are things that you could do to help students in coaching them. And another area is History Day. History Day is huge, and it's not done as much by schools as we would like, because there's so many different types of projects, and with having the education students from the history program volunteer to work with a school near them or somebody that they knew, goodness, would that be helpful? So those are areas, again, all of these things you've talked about would be wonderful on your application to be a teacher. And there's a later question talks about how could you be somebody who would show up as a star, you know, when you're being interviewed. And those are the exact things. And on top of that, you have a great time doing it.
Thanks, Peg. And I see, Mark, you were replying to a question there. And Jacob, actually, I want to, Jacob, why don't I turn the floor over to you? You can ask Peg and Jim your question, and then also if you wanted to share your thoughts a little bit, if you had a couple things prepared for a couple pearls of wisdom for the gang, your experience, and also please share your postgraduate path and what you're up to now, because I think, again, we've got a really diverse crew here in terms of education and in terms of experience. So why don't you, you had a question for Peg and Jim, if you want to, I don't know if you want to lead with that or take it away.
Yeah, first of all, hello, my name is Jacob Banda. Mr. and Mrs. Hill, you mentioned the IE Social Studies program. And what exactly was, I missed it, that you're associated with?
You want to talk about it? I've been talking, so let him talk.
Okay, the California Council for Social Studies, the statewide organization of social studies educators, has local councils. The Inland Empire Council for Social Studies is the one in the San Bernardino, Riverside County areas. There's also a Bay Area one. There's several around the state. So many of the local councils, as well as the state organization, do professional development. Usually it's a relationship between content and process. How can you engage kids in dealing with different kinds of content areas, problem-based learning, all those kinds of things. So that kind of organization, the teachers join. It's a volunteer organization, is I think what we're talking about, if I understand your question.
Yes.
Okay.
A little bit about myself. I graduated from Cal State San Bernardino in 2017 with a degree in history, and I focused on Chinese history, actually. And then I also received a recommendation letter from both Dr. Murray and Dr. Long to get into Cal Poly Pomona's MA's program for history as well, which was an overarching theme of the whole of all history, from ancient civilizations to modern history as well. I'm currently a part-time adjunct professor at Phi Alpha Theta High School in Blythe, California. I teach both, well, facilitate online and correspondence courses. My correspondence courses are primarily with inmates from prisons within California, different prisons. And I'm realizing as I'm doing this now, how hard my professors have had it with syllabi, reading papers, students not doing their darn homework. I mean, you give them you basically do everything you can for them without doing it for them. I mean, I had midterms not get turned in, and I extended, and like I said, I do it a lot for my students via internet. But I did, after I did graduate, I did participate as a volunteer at the Palm Springs Air Museum. And then I got on with Sunnylands. And I was a docent there, a guide. Are we familiar with Sunnylands?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we are. Have you visited, Mrs. Hill?
No, I haven't visited it, but it's on the list.
Please do. Please do. I hope I'm still there when it reopens. It's pretty amazing. It's a nice place, all things considered. So I'm still employed by Sunnylands and Palo Verde High School. And right now, I'm also applying for online positions throughout the country: Cincinnati, Florida, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, wherever I can get online as well, and schools here in the state as well.
Good.
That's about it for me.
It's a hard road to hoe.
Yes, sir.
Well,
Thanks,
Jeremy,
Jacob. That's great. Jim, yeah, please go ahead. And then after you, Jim, Heather had a point you wanted to make about History Day, which Peg had brought up. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, let Heather make her point first, and then I want to talk a little bit about the administrative point of view on some of this stuff.
Excellent. Thanks.
Okay, so when it comes to History Day, I have advised and coordinated the History Day competitions and projects for my school in Florida for the past 2 years. And in fact, last year and this year, I have served as the, or one of the county judges for the fair. And so for instance, this year's theme was breaking barriers in history. And so it gets the kids to start to think as historians. And so I work with them the entire year. I coordinate our school history fair, and I always make that in February because the county level is in March. And then basically, I am very pleased that I have 7 students from my school, actually all of my students, so I'm happy with that are advancing to state this year. So they won the school fair, they won the county, and now they're advancing to state.
That's great. Congratulations on that. Yeah, Peg brought History Day to San Bernardino County when she was the Social Studies Coordinator at San Bernardino County office, and then she ran History Day at San Bernardino County for, I don't know, a zillion years, and maybe a few less than that. So yeah, we're fans of that. And that also is the kind of program that can engage students, as Peg noticed and points out, especially if you can link this year's theme to something that is personal in the lives of those kids.
Right.
And then you kind of have to get it out of their way, because they will roar down the road and they will be very, very engaged. And I think that's always the challenge for all of us.
Yes. If you do it as a competition only, you don't go there. You know, you want to make sure it's something that will be more competitive in this particular field. But if you want to get the students who have not been performing really well, and especially immigrant kids, because they are a little bit afraid of putting themselves out in front. But it's amazing. It turns their whole lives around, that school really matters.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but I like the fact that there are different categories. So for instance, you know, you can do a documentary, a website, you can do an individual or a group exhibit, or documentary, website, performance even. I have 2 kids that were in a group performance. They're advancing to state as well. In fact, they did theirs on the silent film era. So I was very impressed with that. But it sort of brings the kids out of their shell. You know, the ones that are very introverted, they can do it by themselves and it is totally fine. But the ones that are, you know, wanting to collaborate and have these big groups, that is one of the things that they thrive on. And so what I've actually done to increase participation among my students is I've made it a grade. So that is part of their 3rd quarter grade. They're projects that they've been working on the entire time. And the ones that really put forth the effort and really do some very outstanding research and stuff like that, they're the ones that win the school competition, and then they're the ones that advance to county. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting though, being a judge, because you know you see it as a teacher, right? You see it from that aspect, but then also being a judge and witnessing what is, you know, out there and the talent that these kids have is amazing.
When I was running History Day at my high school, in one of my lives, I had about 700 kids competing from 4 different schools in the school district. And I had, in those cases, many of the kids who were History Day, they'd done History Day the year or 2 years prior. I put them on judging teams with adults. And the adults were consistently impressed with the skill and knowledge base of the kids, and the kids were so validated by having an adult think that they knew what they were doing, which they in fact knew what they were doing. So yeah, there's all kinds of ways to skin that cat to make kids realize they have the skills to be able to proceed and to validate for them. And at the same time, you have high standards and you're requiring that, and they grow to it for the most part.
Right.
Thanks, Jim.
One last thing.
Sorry, Heather. I wanted to just jump in just a second. Go ahead in just a minute, and then I'd like to ask Michelle to jump in with a few specific points that she wants to share. So sorry, Heather. Go ahead, and then we'll hear from Michelle Lorimer.
Okay, I was just going to say one final thing. For those of you that are asking, what could you do to make yourself more desirable as a potential teacher at a school? Mention stuff like that. Mention History Day. Say, you know, find out if that school even participates. And if they don't, say that you are versed in it, you know, you've done your research on it, and then, you know, you would be happy to coordinate that. And so that, you know, these extracurriculars are ultimately what these administrations are looking for, because they want to put the school on the map. And so that is one of the things that will help prospective teachers.
Thanks a lot, Heather and Jim. Michelle Lorimer, Professor Lorimer, would you like to jump in on a few specific points?
Yeah, and the points that I wanted to mention briefly are related to History Day and the types of teaching that we expect teachers now to focus on. And that is really looking at the new history social science framework and the other guiding documents that are out there to help guide where student learning should happen. And when we look at History Day, we can see that a lot of the new shifts in the framework, I'll send you a link to it in the chat so that you all have it, include things like inquiry and basing student learning through civic engagement, through understanding multiple perspectives. And when we look at things like inquiry, civics, literacy as a central part of history, and then also looking at content, which has traditionally been the focus of a lot of history, that's one way that we can show that you're desirable candidates, for example. So in many of my classes, I usually base it within those overarching aspects of the framework. So we work a lot with inquiry, with civic engagement, with literacy as a central part of historical development, but also, as Mark mentioned earlier, it's not just based in history. It's good to expand into all of the social sciences within your understanding of the content. So to understand economics, geography, history, aspects of political science or civics and government, anthropology for some students, ethnic studies. So there is a wide range of opportunities to expose students to at the college level, but then also as you move into the credential program to illustrate to future employers that you have a knowledge base within the framework and the most relevant ways of teaching.
That's excellent, Michelle. Thanks. Sorry, I'm getting feedback. I don't know if everybody is, if that's just me. But thanks. And Michelle, you had mentioned that you might need to leave. We're at about the 5 o'clock hour. I think there's we can still take another 25 minutes or something like that, because there are a few of our gang who I still want to hear a little bit more from in terms of sharing. I'm just sort of the go-between, sharing you awesome people with our students. But this is really important. And Michelle, indeed, if you want to share any links, you can go ahead and put them in the chat before you need to leave, and or send them to me in an email. And this same goes for any of our resident experts here. There we are. Thanks. And I hope those of you guys who are joining us, those current students who are joining us, will pay attention to that chat. I will go, if I can figure out the Zoom tricks, and try to save this chat before it vanishes into the ether. And I'll be able to grab a lot of those links. And if I miss them, I'll just ask you guys to resend. But I think we're getting a lot of really, really valuable information. Students who are joining us here are getting a lot of really sort of actionable intelligence, as they say. They sort of really useful material that I think is going to be very, very applicable. Thanks a lot, Michelle. That's terrific. And doing the CSET waiver thing, I definitely know that this is a little bit of a moving target in terms of how things change. And so as Michelle said, as Mark said, staying tuned in to shifts in the curriculum, and seem like they're always to the good. People are always a little bit dubious, and something shifts in one way or the other, and that means we have to adjust our curriculum to some extent. But hopefully, when folks like Jim and Peg are involved in saying, I think we better do this, I think we better add that, there are very steady hands at the helm in terms of helping us adjust and make really, really valuable and insightful and humane corrections to the curriculum. So as things develop, and Trevor got us thinking about that at the very beginning, the way that certain aspects of his world history course are less hospitably received in certain corners of the country, and I think we know why that is. I think in terms of the way curriculum revises and adjusts and updates is in very good hands. Let's see, should say save chat. Thank you, Andrew. To save chat, click on the 3 dots in the chat. It should say save chat. Thank you, Andrew. Andrew just sent me a note. Okay, thanks a lot, Michelle, and thanks to those of you guys who do need to drop out because we're at the 5 o'clock hour. And thanks especially to everybody for joining us in these very, very unusual times for this wonderful service to our students. We are going to save the chat. Thanks, Andrew, for that. And I will, there we go. I've saved what we've got so far, and I'll continue to save the chat. I'm still figuring out the Zoom thing. So let me get out of the way and hear a little more from our awesome panelists. We've got Alex Ponce, who I want to hear a little bit more from as well. And then we'll return to Jim and Peg, Heather and Emily to hear a little bit more from you guys. And if any of our faculty want to jump in, we've got Professor Mark Robinson, Diana Johnson, and Carrie Barber. So you guys can also jump in and weigh in. Yeah, Alejandro, I echo your thanks. Thanks to everybody, professors, and also a lot of these guys are alumni, and that's why I thought this was such a cool event to do, because guys like Emily and Alexander and Jacob and Heather really were where you guys are just a few short years ago, and so. Can I turn it over to Alex Ponce? Did you have a few more thoughts? You only jumped in briefly on other people's comments, and I just wanted to give you a chance to speak at more length if you'd like to.
Oh, sure, thank you. Yeah, I guess the things that I wish I'd known before I got into being a teacher, right? Because that's one of the things we want to address on. I think like what I said before, remember you're teaching kids that are of all kinds of backgrounds and all kinds of needs. You're a teacher, you're a father sometimes and a mother, you're a coach, you're a friend, you're all those things. And remember that if you're not in it for the kids, then they're never going to really know history either. They will not buy into anything you got to say unless they know that you care. And so I think the first thing I had to learn a little bit the hard way, especially through my student teaching, is that genuine caring is something that you got to learn through experience, and that you got to remember that that's the most important thing. And you know, it's funny that you mentioned that being an alumni helped me with that, Jeremy, because and why I like doing these panelists, because I'm an alumni, is because Cal State San Bernardino gave me my second chance in life when I was kind of in a weird transition from, you know, not knowing what to do in my early 20s. Cal State San Bernardino is one of the only schools that accepted me because of my past record. And that's what got me into like loving history even more. And one of the things that I do with my history classes often is this whole idea about self-reflection, that from history I learned that the importance of reflection. And as part of a lot of what I do from the beginning of the year, and all I'm focusing on for the rest of my distance learning, because my district has closed down like everyone else's too, is we're all about reflection now and then how we can get better. And so that's been far more effective of a teaching tool, and it's been much more give back from the students for that, just simply because of the, they know that you care. So yeah, that's all I'll say. You know, I do everything that you've heard from all these other awesome panelists. I can't really add much more to what they've given. That's an awesome set of things, but show the kids you care. Okay, that's what it's about. You know, when you do that, then everything else will become easier. You'll teach your content, they'll understand it, they'll learn it. Don't be so worried about like, how am I going to teach this period in history? How am I going to do this? That comes second nature. You're prepared. Cal State San Bernardino does a great job of teaching history majors. I love this department, and you'll be awesome and an expert. Don't worry about that. You will get that. It's the learning to empathize and being with the kids is the most important thing to learn. And like Emily said and others had said, get yourself in the classroom as soon as possible. Okay. Yeah.
Thanks, Alex. I didn't want to interrupt you, but you better save that guitar behind you.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a little person back there.
You know, it's fallen so often, and I'm sorry. Yeah, it's about that time. You know, kids
No,
are
no,
getting
no.
antsy and all that. So I'm sorry about that, but thank you.
Not at all. It looked like a guitar, and it looked like the little guy was
right.
going for it. So
yeah, it's okay. That's fallen so many times. It'll give
all
me
right.
a reason to get another one.
Good,
Okay,
good.
Thank you.
No, thanks. That's really valuable, and I've heard that from others before, and it's really, really important to hear. Again, you're teaching kids. You're not just teaching history, you're teaching kids. And my brother is now, my brother and my brother-in-law are both teachers, one at the 6th grade level and one at the 11th grade level. And my brother, Jacob, actually, who's over in New York, actually the same as Emily's, upstate New York, near Poughkeepsie, sort of on the east side there. He's also teaching inmates. He's teaching inmates through the Barred Prison Initiative. And is having a really, really wonderful time doing that. Of course, because of the current COVID-19 outbreak, he's not allowed to do that. And that's made it very difficult because of technology access to inmates. But again, teaching students is really what's going on in the classroom. And I've heard, I want to note this for all of our current students, because I just want to amplify what Alexander just said. And I think Heather and Emily and Peg and Jim and Jacob and others probably would as well. And actually my department colleagues might, is that the content will be there. You guys are superstars. The content is there. It's in the curriculum. You guys are going to ace this material. But thinking about how you deliver it, and to whom you're delivering it, that is these students. So much of that learning is going to happen on the ground. It's going to require your empathy. It's going to require your listening. It's going to require you paying attention. You can't steamroll through a class and say, "Well, come on, I taught it perfectly. You know, why didn't you get it?" You've got to cater your materials to different kinds of students. And Jacob, it sounds like you're also working with this kind of thing in your work right now. Different kinds of students, different age groups, but also bringing different levels of concerns, and really unexpected things happening in the classroom. That student that you think is drifting off and not paying attention is actually the one who aces everything. And on the one who you think is bright-eyed and bushy-tailed is the one who ends up needing a lot of extra guidance at different times. So those sort of things have to do with you as a person, with you loving pedagogy, loving teaching. And that, again, back to Mark Rowan and what he started us with, is a lot about the science of teaching. So yeah, you're going to graduate with your content expertise, and you know it. You know that Professor Barber and Johnson and Robinson and me, we're going to put you through your paces. You're going to learn that content. Keep your notes, keep your books, keep your notes and keep your books. You'll have that content. Take good notes. But then also pay attention, because Professor Groen and the gang in the College of Education are going to hit you with teaching, and you're going to think about what goes into a good, a well-taught course. Or if you're going to sub, you're going to learn that on the fly. So you jump right in, and that's the kind of Professor Groen can walk you in through the shallow end and sort of, go in with your floaties on. But if you're going to go in as a substitute, you're going to jump right into the deep end of the classroom. And that's awesome. I really, really strongly recommend it. I've heard that everybody who loves to teach, makes their way as a sub. Don't necessarily love to sub. I'll say they make their way and they do well as a sub because you love working with students. So I just wanted to amplify again what Alex said, because I think it's really, really important. Jim,
can I speak also? Sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry, Emily, go ahead.
I just want to speak to what Alex said, because I think that is the most important thing is at some point in September or October, you're going to realize you're not saying my students, you're going to start saying my kids. And then especially when you're going on dates and you're like, oh yeah, my kids. And then you're like, no.
Yeah.
No, these are like 17, I promise. They're not my kids. There's definitely a sense of almost like being a parent to kids that are barely just 10 years younger than you. And also that they will feel a sense of ownership over you as well. If you are doing your job, they are going to be protective of you. They are going to be overly invested in your life. So especially if you're going to teach high school, you need to be okay with the fact that you have dozens of kids asking about your personal life, just letting you know. And something that I would definitely emphasize is if you can find a school with a mission statement that resonates with you, that is going to make being a teacher so different. I teach for a charter school that specifically sets up roots in impoverished communities where every single one of my students, their families are living under the poverty line. So the first thing when we went remote learning, it was not how are we going to educate our kids, it was how are we going to make sure our kids are eating. And that is going to change your perspective of the kids that you're teaching. And it's also something to be aware of. If you are going to teach in a low income community, you also have to recognize that some of the kids that you are teaching are going home to babysit and are not doing your homework for that reason. So if you are teaching specific types of communities, you need to be prepared for those specific types of hassles. And again, going back to the interviewing process, you need to be prepared for a principal to ask you, like, how are you going to handle homework? How are you going to handle these types of things? Where, again, just emphasizing that these kids are humans. And if you find a school with a mission statement, it's going to make what you do so much better. And just speaking from personal experience, because my school is so small, my principal wrote thank you notes to my parents and my best friend for Thanksgiving, thanking them for what they for me, so I can teach our kids. And so finding small schools has a lot of staff culture and a lot of benefits as opposed to looking for your more traditional district schools. District schools are super, super important, but if something that you're concerned about is kids or staff culture, because I know a lot of teachers that will say, I love the kids, but I hate my staff. I love my staff as much as I love my kids. So if that's something that you're specifically worried about, consider alternative perspectives of charters and private schools where you can be less of a cog in a machine as opposed to just like an actual pillar of the school. Okay, that's it.
Thanks, Emily. Jim or Peg, were you going to jump in?
Yeah, I was. Are you going to jump in? Okay. Well, okay. Just a comment, a couple of comments. I've been a teacher and administrator at 3 high schools and 3 high school districts for 35 years. And then I taught at Cal State in the administration credential and master's program for about 10 years after that. So I can see a tremendous amount of really good advice coming out from people in this conversation. Let me share with you what I saw as an administrator, watching other administrators, and in that administration credential program, I can't tell you how many schools I visited in Riverside and San Bernardino County, on and on. Anyway, okay. Every school district and every school within that district has a distinct culture, as Emily was saying. Public or private, it makes no difference in that regard. Everybody's got a slightly different culture. What I saw happening more often than not was that most principals and district office administrators are much less interested in your content knowledge than they are in what are you going to bring to the school that I need. And what they want to see basically is that enthusiasm. They want to see energy. They want to see evidence of caring. So when you are putting together a resume, when you are getting ready for an interview, be systematic about the things that you have done that indicate some of those involvements. You've heard a lot of them in the conversation today, but go ahead and organize that out and plan for it as a university student at present. Go ahead and volunteer to judge History Day in a local school district. San Bernardino, for example, San Bernardino City Unified does that, or at least they did before the Great Shutdown. So all those kinds of things count. Where you, you know, Peg in her early life taught arts and crafts at city park service. Any of those kinds of experiences that you can lay on in your interview and in your resume really are going to count. By and large, the bad news is that high school principals basically want people in history who can coach a sport. That unfortunately is still largely the case. So you are going to talk about, as you've been hearing, coaching academic decathlon, coaching other kinds of things, academic competitions that have become more important than was the case, you know, several decades ago at least. But still in all, if you have that background in sports, use it. That's one of the things that a lot of people or a lot of administrators want to see. So you're going to want to do those kinds of things that demonstrate energy, enthusiasm. You are going to bring value to the school. That the administrator is going to want to see that. Those years I was a department chair at several high schools, I was literally in some cases at war with my principal over who we were going to hire, because they wanted the person who could coach and they didn't give a crap about their background knowledge. And so it was like, you know, arm wrestling, and I lost some and I won some. But that's, you know, the real world in many, many cases. So you are going to demonstrate as a candidate your experiences. And if you don't have those experiences right now, you have time to go do some of those things. Subbing is definitely one of those experiences once you get your bachelor's degree. Another piece I would put into this is getting yourself out there to meet people. Now, I don't know how that works exactly in this new online age we're in, but being a sub lets them see you, the other teachers, the administrators, they see your active involvement, they see your engagement, they see how you deal with kids, they see your responsibility, those kinds of things. When job openings come up, you are a known quantity. The more you can be a known quantity and get an interview, whether there's necessarily a job opening or not, talking to people. In all of my jobs, frankly, every single job I got, including the university job at Cal State, was a fluke accident where I happened to run into somebody or knew somebody who needed some. I mean, I can't tell you that knowing people and being in the right spot at the right time counts a lot. So those are the comments I want to add to the conversation. I'm done.
Thanks, Jim. I want to turn it over to Heather in just a second. We will go a little bit long. It's really fine if we go, because you guys are such awesome people to spend some time with, and we're all quarantined. So I don't want to be too strict on the time. Really, I mean, this is something I look forward to every year. Thanks, Alex and Mark. Professor Robinson had to duck out just now. I do really think this is an awesome crew of people, and I like getting together with you guys. So hopefully we'll do this again in the fall. There was a question along the lines from Josie about whether or not things will change through the College of Education. So I want to, after Heather gives us some remarks, I wanted to give Mark a chance to respond in terms of any technical things that might be changing from the College of Ed and Credential Program. Heather, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I just had a couple, or rather a few pieces of advice. So one being, take the opportunity to sub. I cannot stress this enough. I somehow managed to make a very lasting impression on my administration for my classroom management skills. And hence why I'm only a second-year teacher, yet I am my social studies department head. So it was all based on my classroom management. And in fact, a lot of veteran teachers are sent over to me to gain some sort of perspective on classroom management. And so what I've noticed is that a lot of the first-year teachers, they get very overwhelmed, and it's because they've never stepped foot in a classroom. They've never had to, you know, somehow build a connection with a class that you only have for 45 minutes. But so the thing is that if you can sub, keep in mind you get a fresh start every day. You are in a different classroom every day. If it fails for you one day, do not worry. It will come to fruition on the next. So subbing, I cannot stress that enough. Make sure you at least do that for like a semester or something. I mean, any experience is good. The second thing I wanted to point out was piggybacking off of Alex earlier, was building that connection with your students. And one of the ways that I found is one of the most effective is I try to learn all of my kids' names within the first 3 weeks. And the way that I do that is I have a template seating chart. I make sure I assign them their seats in the beginning of the school year, and I have them fill out an About Me survey. And I go through very thoroughly, going through, asking them, what do you like? What are your interests? What is one thing you want me to know? And what I will do is I will write that on the seating chart. So as I'm getting to know their names, I get to know what they're into. And that is one of the things, you could bring it up fourth quarter and say, oh yeah, I remember, World War II is your favorite subject, and they just light up because they didn't know that you ever read them, so that's just one way that I do it, obviously take your pick. But, and then the last thing I wanted to say was everybody talks about high school, and trust me, I was there. I wanted to be a high school teacher, but you want to know something? I started teaching 8th graders, and I love middle schoolers. I really do. And a lot of people are like, oh, I like them when they're really young. And oh, I like them when, they can sort of think on a college level. But at the same time, middle school is such a pivotal age for them. And you are going to watch them transform into, young adults. And that is something that I wouldn't change for the world. And if you make a lasting impact on your students, they will come back to visit you. And I will tell you that if you build a very close connection with them to the point where, as Emily was saying, you refer to them as your kids, you will ugly cry at the end of your first year. I did. I ugly cried all the way to school when I knew that I wasn't going to see them past the last day of school. So yeah, it's just a matter of getting to know your kids, getting to, build that connection with them, because I apologize, I can't remember the name of the lady that did a TED Talk, but she said a statement that really resounded with me. And it was, kids don't learn from people they don't like. And so ultimately, you don't have to be their friend, but you can be their mentor, and they're going to like you and at least respect you for it. So those are my little comments that I wanted to make.
Thanks, Heather. I wanted to quickly say to what Jim said, and this is something I think this is kind of my only spiel for the for these events, which I really love doing, and I wish I could talk longer, but I get out of the way. But that is, if the question is, can you do this? The answer is yes, because by the time you have to do it, you'll figure it out. So if an administrator says, oh, do you think you can coach the volleyball team? Yeah, you can. You can, and you probably can just as well as somebody who says very confidently, yes, I can. So say it confidently. Say, yeah, I can coach the volleyball team. I can coach the chess club. I can coach whatever it is. Just say, yes, I can do it. Because if they're asking you and they've seen your resume and they know that you weren't on the Olympic volleyball team, because otherwise you would have listed that on your resume, then say, well, yeah, I know a little bit about volleyball, and I'm sure you can figure out the volleyball stuff between now
That's
and
the
then.
one with the hoop, right? No,
That's the one. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Well, but I have had a little bit of experience coaching, and I've had some coaches that really run the gamut in terms of athleticism and knowledge of the sport. And the best coaches I have had were not necessarily the ones who were the best at the sport. And sometimes actually there's an inverse relationship there, an indirect relationship. So if there's a question of whether or not you can work with a debate club, or you can work with a chess club, or you can work with a soccer team, your first answer should be yes. And I say this because there are a lot of people who are very confident in their abilities and maybe shouldn't be. And if you go into it with humility and a preparedness to work very, very hard. There was some notes just about Jim's points on coaching. You shouldn't rule yourself out because you're not currently the superstar of our Coyote basketball team. You should go in with humility and a preparation to learn a lot between now and then. Now, that isn't to say you should spend all your time learning about basketball so you can coach the basketball team and you neglect your history students or your econ students. But I do think I just wanted to qualify Jim's point and maybe reassure you a little bit. That is to say, a lot of people coaching these teams maybe shouldn't be. Maybe it should be you instead coaching some of these teams. And I think if, as Alex and Emily and Heather have said, if you really care about your students, you're going to do what it takes to give them a really valuable athletic experience and experience in camaraderie and experience in character building. Magic can happen on the court and on the field with a coach who's really a champion of their student athletes, not necessarily wanting to get out there in the track and show everybody they can run faster than them, but rather somebody who's really a champion of the students. And I think that's all of you guys. I think you're all ready to be champions of your students. And so that means you're ready to do whatever is asked of you. And this is also something that Mark brought up. So Mark, sorry, I'll turn it back over to you for any points in terms of changes to the program that students can expect. Thank you, Emily.
First, I want to mention that Heather is absolutely right in everything she said. And I too started in 7th grade. It was the most fun I ever had teaching. Changes in the program. We are going to semesters starting in August. That is going to be a new transition for all of us. So we're all going to be doing that together. Now, that said, we are planning to start face-to-face in August. However, I'm noticing that universities in places like Boston are planning to stay socially distanced until January. So it's going to be an adventure. We'll have to see what California does and what the CSU system does. Right now, we're planning to be face-to-face, but we don't know. That could change. If it does, we'll obviously be running a program, and we will have something in place by August. Whether it's face-to-face or whether it's virtual or whether it's hybrid, we will have something in place for you. There will be a program, guaranteed.
Thank you, Mark. So this is sort of a watch this space kind of a thing. And having folks like Mark in our corner is really important for history majors. So please do watch this space and stay tuned in terms of what's required. Did any of our panelists want to jump in one more time with any closing remarks, any Parthian shots, or any of our students also have questions? And again, you guys know that there's an open line of communication with me and our faculty, and I can get a hold of any of these guys who have spread their wings and flown to the far reaches of the planet.
Yeah, Dr. Murray, I just want to echo the point again, is volunteer, whether it's at a museum, in your community, show that you're part of the community, you are a presence in the community, and that really helps on your CV. And also I'm learning the importance of a CV and the difference between a CV and a resume. However, back to my point, is volunteer, volunteer, volunteer.
Excellent. And pithier than I'm capable of being. Thanks, Jacob. We didn't go into details on CVs and resumes, on hiring committees, on interviewing, on several other topics. So maybe there's a sequel in the works. And I'll talk to Mark. You guys should all be in contact with your career center. You students should all be in contact with your career center in terms of CV and resumes, in terms of interview strategies, and those kind of things. As I think we all know, it's going to depend from one context to the next what's going to be expected of you. But those are all additional things I think that you guys should be bearing in mind. What I would say is, for our current students, start thinking now about what goes into a good resume, what goes into a good CV. And that means having one in the hopper, ready to fire off at any moment. Thanks, Heather. And so I think you guys should feel free to feel free to let us know if you have questions, and I can also forward them on to Professor Groen, to Jim and Peg Hill and others who have read a lot of CVs, and certain ones float to the top, and they can tell us why that is. But what I would say simply is that my CV and resume, CV, has gone under a lot of changes, obviously, all the time. And I always have one that's never more than a month old. And it's not because I'm always looking for a job, it's because I have to do it for my professional file. I always have to have a fresh CV. So you guys all should do that. You all should have a CV. And as you go along, certain things will drop off because they fade into the distance, or you've done much more important things. But keep an active working CV. You can also learn about interview strategies from people you talk to. Just pick up that sort of human resources, residual knowledge along the way as you learn your lessons. These are things that don't have any easy answers to. Competence, in demonstrating competence in an interview, and confidence. Those are all things that you guys pick up along the way. I don't want to keep everybody too much past the 5:30 mark. Are there any other closing thoughts that anybody wanted to share?
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, Carrie.
First, thank you to everyone for sharing all this. It's been really eye-opening, I think. And I just wanted to reiterate a point that was really useful for me on the job market, which was a long, slog through a morass, right? But it was really helpful to document just about everything that I did really carefully to make sure that I was able to bring it back up in conversations and interviews, in a CV and a resume. It's amazing how much you forget. I mean, I think a lot of us we just did our FARs, right? Our faculty reports. And if you look through all these, I mean, you forget just how many meetings you went to. And so, try and keep some kind of working document that goes chronologically, so you can put those things on there and highlight some in certain CVs and others, right? I just thought that was a useful point.
That's a fantastic point. And I think keeping my undergrad notes in terms of content was a very important thing that I did not do. And I wish I had, because I took so many awesome classes as an undergrad. But then also the form of being an undergrad, keeping a list of activities that you do, things that will make a really valuable line on that CV for an administrator looking at your materials later. Andrew, you had a question. Go ahead.
No, not really a question. I just had like you said, a closing remark or final comments or anything like that. I wanted to say, for all the panelists, thank you very much. Especially you, Dr. Murray. It's been a very informative and very awesome, especially being from the Palm Desert campus. I normally would have not been able to do this because I live far away from the Cal State San Bernardino, but because we were able to do it on Zoom, it's been very helpful, and I've been very informative and very appreciative. I'm only a sophomore, but I'm very looking forward to the future, and hopefully one day I could be a great history teacher. So, and you've helped me do that. So I just wanted to thank the panelists and thank you everybody very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Thank you very much. And thanks to our panelists. I really appreciate those remarks. Bill, go ahead.
Same thing for me. Thank you for everyone actually for taking the time during these really hard times actually to take the time and actually help us future teachers get on the right track. It's something that actually I hope to do someday. What you all have been doing. I remember actually meeting you, Dr. Murray. It was actually the quarter before this last one. I was doing catering for one of your meetings you were just having. I was walking out and I talked to you. Completely forgot to contact you in the process. It's been so busy. I actually had the privilege of also having Dr. Barber as one of my professors last quarter when it was his first quarter. He was an excellent professor, someone who's fun, energetic, and everyone here has actually been amazing. More information than I've ever gotten in a long time from multiple individuals that have been in this process and gone to this point where they're doing what they love. And I want to teach for a living. I want to teach for the rest of my life until someone tells me, hey, you're too old to teach. Okay, I got to retire now.
Well, that won't happen. that won't happen. This is a lifelong vocation, Bill. And I remember now where I recognized your name from. I remember meeting you at that event.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much.
I was cleaning up that event for you.
Absolutely, I remember. Yeah, I remember now. And you came over and introduced yourself. I really this is a delight for me to do because it brings together such awesome people, and it's really a lot of fun. We do have to wrap it up now, and I want to let everybody go. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Bill, and thanks to all the students, everybody, Josie, and all the rest who weighed in with your questions. Thanks to Jacob and Carrie and Jim and Peg Hill and Mark Groen for giving us the rundown on what we can expect. And the rest of our panelists have had to step away. This did run a little bit long. I don't want to discourage others from joining us in future events, but it really is absolutely my delight to bring you guys together. And I'm glad that we recorded this session. Again, Andrew, as you noted, it's an unusual time we're in, but here we are for the first time recording one of these sessions. And I think, as you noted, Andrew and Bill, it was an action-packed, information-packed session. Lots of really, really valuable material there. I'm going to get this recording, and if my internet will sustain it, I'm going to try to get it uploaded to YouTube. But in the meantime, I'll share the link with our history department, and anybody else who wants the link can email me directly. Thanks, and thanks, Bianca, Haley, Josie. This has been a really, really wonderful session for me. And as Carrie, I'm sure knows, this is eye-opening for us as well as faculty. This is a very different experience from what we have. And we get some really great perspectives. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Peg and Jacob, and all of you guys for joining us. So let's wrap it up, and I'll stay tuned for the sequel.
Okay. Bye-bye.
And stay
Bye-bye.
safe, guys.
Bye,
Take
guys.
care of yourselves. Thanks. Bye.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Looking forward to the sequel.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
We're
Take
gonna
care.
leave
Thank you
now.
very much. You too.
There we go. We're leaving the meeting.